Hi, I'm Alex Gaynor. I'm one of the core developers of Django, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of Django today and where we're headed. So the most recent thing that happened in the sort of the history of Django is 1.3 was released on March 23rd, and it was pretty awesome. It had a ton of new features. So one of the biggest ones was class-based views and class-based generic views, which is sort of not a framework, but a style for how you should write views, a set of base classes, and just a general cleanup of the sort of the old generic views, which were difficult to extend, not flexible, and didn't really implement a pattern that was nice for other people to implement. So like if you wanted to distribute your own reusable application, it sucked to write generic views in the old style. But now you've got tons of base classes and mix-ins and whatnot, and it's a really good pattern. I'm gonna show off some of the benefits of it as we go through this. So that was one of the major new features. Next one was Django finally got logging. Proper way to configure logging, work with the standard libs logging module, logging of a few things within Django, which tangentially gave you better functionality, like you could control what happened on a 500 page without overriding the entire view, because now that's just a logging handler. And so that was pretty awesome. Django contrib static files was added. Somebody talked about this last week and how it makes static files much more awesome to deal with and deploy, and that was cool. And there's an external app if you're still not running 1.3, which you totally should because it's pretty awesome. We added unit test 2 to Django, so makes testing more awesome. And in addition, there were a bunch of cool test helpers that were added to Django, like assert num queries, and I think there's some other stuff too. It was pretty awesome. And just tons of other just general bug fixes, minor features, new things, and just general awesomeness. It was like tons and tons of stuff added to Django. Like I couldn't fit them all in these slides easily. So another question is, that's where we've come from. Where are we headed? So the obvious thing is next we're going to do 1.4, and I'm going to talk about what features have already landed in 1.4, what's planned for 1.4 insofar as anything is planned, and then sort of some pie in the sky stuff for the real future of Django, above and beyond anything we can predict today. And please kick our asses. We have not announced a release schedule for this, and that sucks. It's been like several months since the last release, and so you guys should be yelling at us, what is the schedule, when are the alphas, when are the betas? We had an internal schedule we were planning, and we've now passed both the alpha and the beta dates, so you guys should kick our asses because this sucks. And so one of the major things is we're going to be dropping Python 2.4. So you need Python 2.5 and up, and I think this is because RHEL from 7 years ago finally dropped security. So now we can finally drop 2.4 in Django, and this means we're going to be sticking context managers everywhere because they're pretty much the most awesome thing to come out of Python 2.5. So asserts, form helpers, just anything you can think of that could possibly use a context manager, it's pretty much going to be there, and it's going to be awesome. Next thing that's landed is model.objects.select for update. So some databases let you, when you select a row, mark it internally within the database that you're going to be updating it, which puts some sort of lock on the row within the transaction, and so that's now exposed to you, which is useful if you need it. Probably a lot of people don't need it, but when you do, you kind of do need it, and it sucked to have to write raw SQL for this before. So that's there. We're now shipping all the templates that are shipped with Django are now HTML5. I'm a developer. I don't know anything about the front end. I'm told HTML5 is the hot shit, so it's supposed to be awesome. I really have no idea what this means. It's like the future, though. It's bigger than 4, right? So it's kind of awesome. To go with that, there have been a bunch of improvements to the admin UI. The two biggest are that filtery thing on the what side is that? Your right. On your right-hand side is now customizable. It used to be you could only have a field on the model directly. Now you can do related fields, customize how stuff's displayed, customize what choices are visible. Everything about it's customizable now and is much more useful as a result. And the other thing, this has been a long requested feature, and I don't know how visible it is in the screenshot, but you can now order on multiple columns, which is pretty awesome. It used to be before, even if you told Django multiple columns, it would ignore that and just use the first one. So now it both respects what you tell it in your admin.py, as well as letting you, from the UI, provide multiple fields and do stuff on it, and having them sort in different directions and all sorts of craziness. Another big one is signed cookies. So now essentially what a signed cookie is, you send some data down to the client, and then when it gets sent back up to you as part of the cookie, it's verified that you have the right data in there. And along with this is a bunch of sort of low-level plumbing that's sort of reusable for how you do cryptographic signing in a way that's secure, so you don't have like giant security bugs in your app, which would suck. And to go along with this, there's a new session backend which stores your data in a cookie. And what this means is you can't store any data you don't want the user to have, but it means you can do something like put the user's ID in a cookie, which is safe. And because it's signed, you can verify that they can't change their ID. But this means if you store, say, their name in a cookie, you don't have to do a database query if the only information you want to display is a name. This is pretty useful for sort of high-performance websites that want to like really minimize the number of database queries and stuff like that. It's not possible right now, but I think sort of in a looking to the future sense, it would be very cool if you could have multiple session backends set up, so you could have some data that's stored in a cookie and other data that's actually stored server-side, because some data is, say you run a shopping cart and you want to store some, like the current state of the cart in the session, and you have data that the client can't see, like you want to store, I don't know, tracking data or something. And so you want to store that on the server, but you still want to get like the less SQL queries from storing their username in a cookie. So I think something like that would be a cool future direction. And another cool thing is a new form wizard. Form Wizard's this thing that's been sitting in Contrib for like forever. And I don't know, has anyone in the room actually used Form Wizard? It's like, okay, 4 people maybe. And it wasn't that good before, to be honest. But now it's been totally rewritten using the new class-based generic views. It has pluggable storage. Before, you needed to have any data from a previous step in the form. You needed to be stored in a hidden field on the page, which meant you couldn't do things like have file fields on any page besides the last one. And now it's all been fixed. They've got like pluggable storage and a cool API, and they integrate with everything really well. And they're pretty awesome. And again, there have been tons of other minor bugs and features and random stuff that's been fixed. So it's pretty awesome. You should check out Trunk. It's pretty stable, as Django Trunk generally is. Test it with your apps. Let us know if we've broken anything. Yeah. So and then at this point, we're leaving the realm of stuff that's sort of concrete and planned and landed and coded, and entering the realm of stuff that's sort of guesswork. So let's see. So this is something I've been working on, model.objects.bolt create. And essentially, it's an optimization so that you can do a single SQL query to insert multiple rows into your database. It's really useful. For example, the Django tests are about 20% faster using this because things like installing the permissions whenever you have to flush the database are super expensive and apparently take a ton of time. So right now, I've got this implemented for SQLite and Postgres. I'm going to add MySQL support, I guess, and then land this, and it will be awesome, and your apps will magically get faster without even having to use it, because there's all sorts of places that can use it internally in Django. So for example, many-to-many field.add takes multiple objects. If you pass it multiple objects, it'll now do a single SQL query rather than n of them. It has a few small caveats, like it doesn't send signals, it doesn't call the save method on the object, so if you need those, you can't use this. And it doesn't work with model inheritance for very, very obscure, complex reasons. This is sort of an open-ended thing, but one of the things I think I see in Django's future is Django trying to shed some of the stuff it has and ship less in the box. And to that effect, sort of having more interfaces within Django and maybe shipping less actual implementations. So an example, this is Django in 1.2 added email backend support. The original impetus for this was Google App Engine and other sort of hosted providers that don't let you just use SMTP, but rather have like their own special APIs for sending email, being able to expose this in a generic way. But as a result, we're now at a point where we could feasibly remove the SMTP backend from Django and still have people be able to use email because they can install their own custom backends. And I know a lot of people do have their own custom backends, for example, for queuing up emails and stuff like that. And there's a lot of examples of stuff like this. Sort of the extreme end of this would be, if you can imagine, removing the database backends from Django itself. A Django install coming with sort of the ORM, but you have to install Django Postgres or something. And maybe possibly having, you know, when you pip install Django, or God forbid easy install Django, if you do that, maybe having it still pull in all these backends that were formerly shipping as part of Django, but having them live as maybe external packages, which could be maintained separately, have different groups of maintainers. It's probably true that there's a wildly different set of people interested in maintaining the database backends and the email backends. Along with this idea is a Google Summer of Code from last year by Arthur Koziel called the app refactor, which essentially brings the idea of refactoring how Django loads your applications in, and specifically allowing you to install applications multiple times, have applications that have the same sort of app label. So right now, there's Django contrib auth. You can't have another app named auth anywhere on your Python path because of long-standing internal details. So as a result of this refactor, you would now be able to have that. You'd be able to, say you had a comments application, you'd be able to install it twice, say once for commenting on users and once for commenting on sporting events, without needing to have some sort of generic foreign key or other sort of database hack. Sort of a really far-fetched thing that I think would be good is to break out contrib entirely. The mantra for contrib for a long time has been that it's a set of de facto common implementations of common patterns or something like that. It's common stuff that we sort of know how to do, but the reality is for a lot of the stuff that lives in contrib, there isn't one right way to do it, and I think auth is a really good example of this. Almost everyone has fought with auth at some point. Whether it was a few releases ago, it was just downright impossible to have emails instead of usernames. We've evolved auth where that's possible, but now if you want to have Facebook or Twitter integration, you got to have sort of a shim between auth and the rest of your stuff. And so sort of in general, I think sort of thinning out contrib would be good, because there tend to be stuff in there that is not the de facto pattern we once thought it was. It is good that Django ships sort of a secure auth system that stores passwords securely and has a password reset that doesn't have security holes. And sort of, there are a lot of aspects of auth that are sort of important that we ship from a security perspective, but as people have different ways they want to implement user authentication, having more concrete implementations of stuff often makes it harder for users rather than easier as we'd like. And I think this is true for a lot of contrib, where there's frankly stuff in there that probably no one uses. Anyone here humanize? Okay, one, two. A few people use humanize, not most people. How about, I can't even remember what it's called. It's called like design tools or something. It's got one template tag that just spits out a paragraph of lorem ipsum. I don't know anyone who uses this, but Django's been shipping it for forever. Yeah. And so in terms of another thing in terms of the future of Django is Google Summer of Code is going on right now, and we have 3 pretty awesome projects. The first one is template compilation, which is being done by Armin Ronacher, who is the author of Flask and Jinja 2 and other stuff. He's one of the Puku people, so he does like Sphinx and Pigments and all kinds of other awesome stuff. And essentially what he's looking to do is Django has a template language that is both sort of a front end that parses the templates as well as a bunch of built-in template tags. Jinja 2 has the same sort of front end, same sort of built-in template tags. Essentially what he wants to do is take a lot of the template compilation infrastructure he's built for Jinja, which is super fast compared to Django and compared to most template engines, and take this template compilation infrastructure and generalize it so both the Django template engine can use it, as well as sort of any other template compilation language. So we can have this one shared infrastructure that handles all the really hard problems, like say compiling your templates efficiently, but still giving you nice tracebacks and still working in environments like Google App Engine, which you can't do some of the things that Jinja normally likes to do, or the current template compilation infrastructure likes to do. So sort of taking all these reusable patterns and sharing them across multiple template implementations. A part of this is going to be refactoring the template tag interface. Show of hands, how many people here actually like how you write template tags right now? One, maybe? Yeah, okay, so in my opinion, the template tag API right now sucks to define new template tags. There are tons of helper applications out there, Django classy tags, Django T tag, Django template tag sugar, all are trying to provide a higher level API, and that's going to be required just from a technical perspective on implementing this, so expect to see something new coming that way. Composite fields, this is a really old ticket in Django, like 373 or something, really, really old, and essentially you cannot have in Django multiple primary key column fields. You can't have more than one field for a primary key in Django right now, because you can't have any sort of composite field. And this is going to introduce those and let the primary key stuff flow from them. So you'll be able to work with legacy databases, define new databases that have composite primary keys, all sorts of other awesome stuff like that. It's probably going to feature refactors, various internal to Django which are going to enable cool new things, like defining new under lookups on fields. Right now you have basically a static list of those, and if you don't like it, that's tough. This is going to enable you probably to have custom lookups, which will be awesome. And the last one is being done by Gregor Mueller, and he's working on making templates and forms awesome. Right now in Django templates, you have not a lot of, if you want to write good forms for your template, or good templates for your forms, it's not real pleasant. You can either sort of use the built-in as UL, as table, as P, and try to style them and pray to God you like the HTML that comes out. You can iterate over the fields, which is nice, but doesn't give you real flexibility to do things like lay them out with two fields on the same row, or put them in form sets, or any other cool things like that. And you can't do things, or and the final option is to have, sort of lay out every field manually for every form on your site, which sucks. And so this is going to define the goal of this project is to define a set of template tags, built-in templates and sort of patterns, so that you can do things like lay out your forms and say, I want to have a row here which has these fields in it, another row, and organize these into form sets, and have it automatically use the same set of templates, be able to swap out widgets for fields within the template, and hopefully eventually be able to do things like be able to have your designer say, this is where the JavaScript comes from for this field, without needing to go in and edit your Python files, which will be pretty awesome, I think. And so that's sort of what we have on the table right now for Django. But the most important thing, where most of Django's direction comes from, is it comes from you guys, the users, telling us what you want to see, writing patches for the things you care about, and we sort of define what ships in the box. But the Django community has shown that what ships in the box isn't nearly as important as what the community does with it in terms of building a website, building actual products with Django, writing usable applications for other people, defining what the best practices are. So the future of Django is kind of up to you guys. Yeah, so thank you very much. Questions? Yes, the question was, there was a mailing list post a little while ago by Jacob Kaplan-Moss where he tried to articulate what he'd heard in terms of feedback for what Django needed from sort of the enterprise users he works with. And two of the big ones were marriage of Django and some sort of front-end tool, and a settings, so how you deal with a large number of settings files. And so the question was obviously what's happened on those fronts. And so to the question of the front-end tool, I don't realistically see Django ever shipping a JavaScript toolkit or anything like that saying you should use this in your applications. Obviously, I think since then the admin has adopted jQuery, which in large part has allowed us to do some of the nice new admin UI things. There's no plans to extend that forward and say users should use this. But I see the template and form stuff as an opportunity there. I know Russell Keith McGee has had an idea, another core developer, has had an idea he's been kicking around for a while of essentially the Python package index, but for reusable widgets. And so I think the idea of having some sort of JavaScript framework integration come as a result of here's a set of template tags and other stuff that works with it well is good. Because from my perspective, I don't see what Django could ship itself to make JavaScript better that you can't do in an external app. And from my perspective, that's better, because my perspective is anytime you add more code to Django, it's a little more lock-in if someone doesn't want to do that, and it's a little more stuff for me to maintain. To the settings thing, there has not been a ton of movement on settings, other than we sort of now have an informal policy of, please God, don't add any more settings to Django itself. There's too many. Like, you're not allowed to add a new one unless you take one out, informally, which is to say it's violated all the time. So I don't know any, there's no official movement on that. I think it would be really good if there was a set of community guidelines, especially sort of from my perspective, there's now a ton of Django or Python specific hosts that are popping up, and they're all going to be, they all want to minimize the friction of setting up a Django app, and part of that's going to be, here's the convention for using our service, so that if you do this, your settings is automatically set up. It would be really good if they all shared a convention or had some sort of, a set of conventions they all understood, or whatever the right thing is, so everybody's on the same footing. Django's really good about this in a lot of other areas. Everybody puts their models in their models.py, their views in their views.py, their URLs in their URLs.py. It would be good if we had a similar sort of convention around settings. Yeah, so the question is, what is the right way for reusable apps to define their own settings? And I think this is, right now the answer is you sort of namespace it within your app by like prefixing every setting name with something and praying to God nobody else has like something similar. I think this is a problem that's really well solved by the application refactor I alluded to. Because essentially it allows you to define an application class. You can still define apps in the old way, but now you can have a class that represents your app that can be instantiated multiple times, and essentially settings can live on it. So the sort of new style way would be, instead of having a set of settings in your settings.py, you would have it your project level somewhere, a subclass or an instantiation of the app that's provided the settings you want. In the same token, this solves the problem of having all those sort of auto-load, auto-registration stuff in like your root URLs.py, like you have admin.autoload and any other app that wants to sort of piggyback on that same methodology. They all now have a hook on their application class that allows them to automatically have that. So once this lands, if you have admin installed in your installed apps, then it'll know, oh hey, I'm installed, I can load up all of your admin.py files. And this also solves problems around sort of where do I put my signals, where do I register my signals. All this stuff now sort of has a defined place to put itself at application startup. So the question was about sort of the splitting up of Django and separate installability. So there's no real concrete plans around this. It's a little pie in the sky at the moment because it relies on sort of having some of the future installation niceties that come with distutils 2 and pip, future versions of pip, and sort of everyone being on the same page there, in terms of us not breaking everyone who tries to pip install Django and expect to have everything. There's no precise plans to pull out something like templates, which and the reason is because it relies on a bunch of stuff in utils being sort of the dumping ground for stuff that's maybe used in more than one place in Django. And so figuring out that dependency chain would be sort of a first step towards it. Sort of splitting out contrib or certain backends is more possible because they would obviously, you'd still need to have the rest of Django to be installed. Whereas if the goal was to install just templates, the objective is obviously not to have everything else. It's the case today that you can basically use templates without using anything else in Django, but I don't see something as sort of the infrastructure like templates being separately installable in the immediate future. So the question was, why is the future of Django brighter than the future of Ruby on Rails? My answer is, I have no idea. I don't actively track Rails development, so I don't know a lot about what they're doing. It seems to me, like from the high level, that we're taking sort of very similar approaches in terms of lightening the load. It's my impression that Rails 3 split out a lot of things like how they integrate with their ORM and sort of other back-endy type stuff. And I think we're definitely progressing on a similar path that. I still am very fond. I think the real answer is why Django's future is bright is because Python's future is bright. There are like so many like good things happening in the Python world right now in terms of other libraries, just the general health of the web framework ecosystem with us now having a proper PEP for a WSGI on Python 3K, having this sort of shared template compilation infrastructure with other web programming or with other template languages. There's sort of discussions about having maybe some sort of shared request object so that Django has the same request object as Flask, has the same request object as WebOb, sort of low-level stuff like this that lets the whole community focus together on solving one problem once, I think is why the future of Django is so great, because the future of everything around us is awesome. So the question is about Django itself moving onto a distributed version control system. And to quote Russell Keith McGee, we already do support DVCS. Like every core developer, I think except for Adrian Holovati, uses some form of DVCS, and we take patches on Mercurial, on Git. Even on, I think we have people who use Bazaar and Darks even. So we take patches there. It is unlikely that Django will move at this point, or at this time I should say, because SVN is a decent lowest common denominator. You can write to it from Git, from Mercurial, from Bazaar. If there was a DVCS that was a similarly available target for all of us, maybe that would be possible. For a lot of the core developers right now, we don't see the impetus because we're already using it, and there's repositories on GitHub, on Bitbucket. I do see the perspective from a lot of people feel like it's easier to contribute something on GitHub or Bitbucket, and I think if we could find a way to work with their workflows so we could accept pull requests on those sites, that would be good, because I mean obviously the end goal for all a VCS is a tool, and we want it to be as easy as possible to contribute to Django, both for other people as well as ourselves. So yeah, no concrete plans, I guess. Okay, well, thank you very much.